Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Cultured Pull List. In this week's episode, we're talking about DC's Batman 3 Jokers. Kind of a controversial, but a very interesting and kind of cool story, kind of self contained Batman story. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Mike. My co host, Luke, will be joining me for the discussion section, as per usual for the last few weeks. I do want to apologize for being kind of spotty with the uploads the last few weeks. I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, and that just threw everything out of whack, so. But count on regular uploads every Friday from now on. Now, this week's topic, book, whatever, is definitely controversial. The whole idea of the three Jokers definitely doesn't sit well with quite a few fans, but I will say there is a lot of cool Batman stuff in this story. There is a lot of interesting Batman lore that gets mentioned and Batman stuff that's just paid tribute to. So it is a very cool story, and I do like what they do with Red Hood. So it's definitely a mixed bag, but overall I did enjoy this. Me and Luke probably disagreed the most in this episode than any other one we've done so far. So yeah, I mean, if you want to just skip to the discussion, you totally can. I'll leave time codes in the description. But before we do that, I just wanted to kind of do a little bit of a background about the three Jokers. So in this story, there are three main Jokers, and one is they're labeled the criminal, the comedian, and the clown. Now, the criminal is supposed to be representative of the golden age Joker from the 30s to the mid 50s. The clown is supposed to be like the Joker from the Silver Age, the mid 50s to the 70s, and then the comedian Joker is supposed to be representative of the Bronze Age through to the modern age version of the Joker that's a lot more sadistic and evil and crazy. That's the context for the three Jokers. Now, there was a bit of a prelude to this in the Dark Side War storyline where Batman was in the Mobius chair and he asked the Mobius chair what the Joker's real name was. And he later reveals to Green Lantern that the chair told him there are three Jokers. So that kind of spawned this whole three Jokers storyline. Though the story itself, it's very nebulous whether this falls into canon or not, kind of like the Killing Joke. So I'm not really sure going forward whether this is considered canon or not. This is a Black Label book, and those are usually kind of like a separate canon, kind of like an Elseworld story, but I don't know. Anyway, let's get into the book. Batman 3 Jokers was written by Geoff Johns, with art by Jason Fabok. The colorist is Brad Anderson, and the letterer is Rob Lay. And this was a 3-issue miniseries released between August 2020 and October 2020. So our story begins with this kind of cool scene where we see Batman limping into the Batcave, battle damaged, and Alfred starts mending his wounds, and we see all the different scars Batman has gotten over the years, and we also see how he got them from Bane, Riddler, Catwoman, and then we see a series of injuries and scars that were all inflicted by the Joker, which is basically implying that the Joker is his greatest nemesis, which we already knew, but just a little reminder, I guess. And we also get a flashback again to Joe Chill murdering Bruce's parents. This is somewhat important later, though. I feel like most people who know much about Batman know that Joe Chill killed Bruce's parents, at least in most of the main comic canon. We then see Barbara Gordon working out at the gym. We see she's obviously working through some issues as she runs so fast and so intensely that she breaks one of the treadmills at the gym. And there's also some news reports going on the TVs talking about different people that have been being murdered by the Joker, including this comedian. We then see Barbara Gordon in the shower, which is mainly just to show her scar that she still has from when the Joker shot her. And we see kind of a flashback. She's obviously still thinking about it and still traumatized by it. We then cut to Red Hood, who was beating up several of the Joker's thugs in a graveyard. He's trying to track down the Joker and trying to get these guys to talk. And while he's fighting them, he's having a bit of a flashback to when the Joker murdered him. So it kind of puts a parallel between Barbara and Jason. They were both brutally attacked, and in Jason's case, murdered by the Joker. And they still have obvious trauma and PTSD from it. Then we cut to Batman, who has been called to a crime scene at Ace Chemicals, where three men have been dressed up in the Red Hood outfit, the original Red Hood outfit, and doused in chemicals. They pretty much look like the Joker. It seems like the same chemicals that created the Joker. And they're all trying to figure out what happened, but Batgirl shows up too. But then and they're trying to figure out where the chemicals went because they're all gone along with the Joker. But it turns out one of these victims is still alive, so he gets rushed to the hospital, where it turns out the EMT in the back is actually Red Hood, and he attacks the victim and tries to get information from him, but Batman is able to get into the ambulance and stop him. And the reason Red Hood is so okay with attacking a victim is it turns out, I guess, this guy was a criminal too, so he doesn't really feel bad for him, but still, Batman stops him, and then we cut to Joker driving away in this Ace Chemicals truck, and he drives it out to a secluded cabin where he knocks on the door, and who opens the door but the Joker. And it's pretty heavily suggested, or it's pretty much said, that the Joker driving the truck is the clown Joker, while the Joker who opened it in his Barbara shooting outfit is the comedian Joker. And then we see a little bit of a round table, a meeting between the three Jokers. This is the criminal Joker. And the criminal Joker is basically explaining, to them, which they should already know. So pretty much he's explaining to the reader that the Joker needs a new, like, face, basically. Like, it needs, the Joker needs a revamp. And we kind of learn more about this later. When Batman stopped Jason in the ambulance, he suggested that they team up because Jason was already coming after the Joker and he already has information. And the information he got apparently was on the wrench that one of Joker's thugs hit him with were traces of seawater. And because it was clean, Jason figured it wasn't from the harbor, so they're able to track the water down to the Gotham Aquarium, where it's pretty apparent pretty quickly that this is where the chemicals are. They've been poured into the water tanks with the fish, and it obviously doesn't have the greatest effect on them. But pretty quickly, they are attacked by the Clown Joker and his goons, and they're able to take them out pretty easily. And this little guy, Gagsworthy, he's some like kind of deep cut Joker um, sidekick from like the older comics, and he ends up getting eaten by this Joker shark, so that's fun. But the clown Joker shows his face and is quickly beaten to a pulp by the Bat family, by Barbara, Batgirl, Red Hood, and Batman, who tie him to a chair and kind of start interrogating him. And Batman is called away to another murder, so another crime scene. So Jason and Barbara are left with this Joker, who admits to being the one that murdered Jason. And Jason just kind of lets his emotions get the better of him, and he pulls out his gun and, well, shoots the Joker in the head, even though Barbara kind of tries to stop him, but Jason kind of accuses her of letting him do it because she throws a batarang to stop him, but she misses. And he's like, I never really know you to miss. So then we cut to the two remaining Jokers. They're just kind of talking, and this Joker is having a conversation with these two, his wife and kid, but obviously they're not quite his wife and kid, so yeah. In case you weren't aware that the Joker's bad shit. So then we cut to the crime scene where it turns out a judge was murdered, but he is also doused in those Joker chemicals. So then Barbara shows up and tells Batman that Jason killed one of the Jokers. And she seems like pretty furious at Jason, but Batman seems to have a little more compassion. Seems like he has guilt over what happened to Jason, so he's trying not to judge him too harshly. And Batgirl's kind of indignant about that. So then we see Red Hood, Jason, interrogating some more crooks, and he's able to use the Bat computer and his lenses and helmet to see that there are a bunch of traces of chlorine on this guy. Um, so then we cut back to Batgirl and Batman, who are headed to Blackgate because Batman got a fingerprint uploaded from Jim Gordon that was at the crime scene at the judge's house. And it turns out that the fingerprint is Joe Chill's, the guy who murdered Bruce's parents. So he goes to Blackgate, kind of has another flashback, goes to Joe Chill's cell, but he's not there. It turns out he's in the infirmary because he has some sort of um, fatal illness. I believe it's cancer. Yeah, stage 4 cancer. And he's passed out at this point. He's not any good. So Batman's trying to figure out why the hell Joe Chill's fingerprints would be at the crime scene. Then we see Red Hood, who has figured out where the chlorine came from. It came from the Gotham like city pool, and he finds that a bunch of other chemicals, the same ones, have been taken to this pool and filled this pool, and a bunch of other people have been thrown into the chemicals to be kind of jokerized, and Jason takes a sample, and yeah, it's pretty clearly pretty toxic. Uh, then he takes off his helmet for some reason. No, and he is attacked by somebody who seemingly survived the process, which makes Jason lower his guard, and he's able to be captured by the two remaining Jokers. And they tie him to a chair in the nude, which is nice. And this criminal, they also kind of put his helmet on and bash him upside the head just to be extra dickish. And the criminal Joker basically explains to Jason that they're trying to make a better Joker that means more to Batman and is more iconic, I guess, and more important to Batman. And he also reveals that when he laughs, it hurts, which reminds me a lot of the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. So it's kind of interesting. But Jason is able to be tracked by Batman and Barbara because he used the Bat computer. They're able to track him to the pool, and they're actually all attacked by the people that were put in the pool, who have been jokerized. So Batman and Batgirl are able to fight their way to Jason, who is in a bad way and kind of flips out on them, but they take care of him and bring him back to Barbara's house where he's staying. Batman leaves to look more into the case, and Barbara's kind of mad at him for that, but he's like, he's safe. He's okay with you. The Gotham needs me. So Jason and Barbara kind of share a moment, kind of share a bonding moment over their trauma with, the Joker, and Jason kind of apologizes for what he did, and you know, they kind of share a moment, and they actually share a kiss, though Barbara pulls away pretty quickly and feels like it was a mistake. Then we see, or I'm gonna cut through this because I meant to remove this. Oopsies. Then we see Joe Chill broken out of Blackgate by the Joker, and the Joker is forcing him to confess to who actually put him up to killing the Waynes on videotape, because it had been suggested in this story that somebody else was behind Joe Chill's murder. So then we see Batman, Batgirl, and Red Hood poring over all the evidence, all of the different people that the Jokers had killed, had tried to turn into a new Joker, and had kind of abandoned um, trying to turn them into Jokers for whatever reason. None of them were the right candidates. And Jason kind of confronts Batman about never killing the Joker, and Batman kind of flips out on him and says, you think I never wanted to, that like every single day I think about killing him. And I find this scene really interesting, because I think a lot of Batman because I think a lot of creatives who adapt Batman in one way or another, whether it's other media or the comics, they kind of make Batman really sanctimonious with his like no kill rule. And I find it a lot more interesting and frankly kind of, I don't know if realistic is the word, but a lot more believable that Batman like kind of has the rule because he kind of wants, he definitely is tempted to kill some of these criminals, but he can't allow himself to do that. I find that a lot more compelling than when he's like, I would never even think of killing, and it's like getting really just kind of sanctimonious about it. So I did really like this scene. And in this scene, Jason also says that the real reason Batman won't turn him in for killing the Joker is because it would reveal their secret identities. So yeah, definitely a little bit of trouble in the Bat family, but what's new? So while they're having their little scuffle, the the Bat computer alerts Batman that Joe Chill's been broken out of prison. So he goes over to Blackgate again, and this time he actually investigates his cell, where apparently there were a lot of letters that he wrote to Bruce Wayne. Um, and talking to the warden, Batman learns that he wrote all those letters to Bruce Wayne, basically showing that he had a change of heart and was trying to find ways to tell Bruce he was sorry. To tell Bruce he was sorry, but he never sent them. But then there's one letter in different handwriting to the Batman, and it shows a ticket to the Monarch Theater, obviously from the Joker. That theater was where Bruce and his parents went the night they died. His parents died, and we do also see Jason and Barbara. Jason's trying to talk to her about that kiss they shared, and she said it's not a good time to talk about that, and he also apologizes to her, saying he knows he screwed up, and he won't do anything like that again. So then we see the Bat family investigating the Monarch Theater, which it doesn't take long for the show to start. And we see Joker interrogating Joe Chill, trying to get him to confess, like we saw earlier, to why he actually killed the Waynes. And this plays while all this other stuff is going on. The different Jokers attack, well, not, the Jokerized victims attack Barbara and Jason, while the criminal Joker has Joe Chill hoisted up in the rafters and confronts Batman. And we learn that Joe Chill actually killed the Waynes on his own accord. He was basically down on his luck, and he basically blamed people like the Waynes who had everything for him having nothing. So he just took out his anger on them and killed them. Um, but then later on, he learned of all their work in the community and their philanthropic work, and he felt really guilty and bad about it. And he basically like apologizes on camera. And while this is happening, Batman confronts the criminal Joker, who has a dynamite vest on and is about to light it. And he basically explains that he's going to turn Joe Chill into the best version of the Joker because of his emotional connection to Batman. Obviously, the Joker knows who Bruce Wayne is at this point, and he's going to douse Joe Chill in these chemicals and turn him into the ultimate Joker. You know, the Joker that a Joker that killed Bruce's parents. So now this Joker will mean everything to Batman. And we also see Jason and Barbara fighting more Jokers, and then the comedian Joker attacks Jason, but he actually shoots Jason, but Barbara smashes his camera into his face. Um, and Batman is able to kind of get the drop on criminal Joker and knock him off balance, but he ends up dropping his lighter, which falls into the chemicals and starts burning up the whole theater. And criminal Joker cuts Joe Chill's the rope suspending Joe Chill, sending him falling into the burning chemicals. And without hesitation, Batman swoops in and saves the man who killed his parents. And outside, he's face to face with Joe Chill, remembering him killing his parents. And Joe Chill asks Batman if he's going to kill him, saying he deserves it. And Batman says no. And Joe Chill says softly, "I truly am sorry." And Batman then again has to save Joe Chill because the walls come tumbling down on him, left unstable by the fire. And once inside the Monarch Theater again, we see the criminal Joker get shot in the head by the comedian Joker. And he then gives himself up to be taken into custody. So outside the Monarch Theater, Jason again talks to Barbara about them, kind of revealing he does have feelings for her, but she says it was a mistake. And as he goes away, Jim warns Batgirl like to stay away from Red Hood, and she basically says it's none of your business and calls him Dad. So it's not really clear if he already knew she was Batgirl or not, but he definitely knows now. So then we cut to Batman and Joker having a conversation in the back of the police truck and the police van, and the comedian Joker highly implies that he was the original and that he created the others, and that the criminal Joker was deluded, and he doesn't think that they need a new Joker. He thinks he already does mean everything to Batman. He's already important enough, and that like just him being the embodiment of chaos and evil is enough. He doesn't need to have some deep emotional connection to Bruce. And actually, this was all he let all this happen, and even suggested they use Joe Chill as the next Joker because he knew he had a change of heart, and he wanted Batman to basically reconcile with the man that had killed his parents. So now that he doesn't have, that scar so much anymore, or like that wound, now he's free to just have the Joker be the worst pain in his life now. So yeah, that's nice. And there's this nice moment where Bruce actually reads the letters that Joe Chill wrote him and goes and sees Joe Chill in the hospital as he passes, and really does seem to kind of let himself heal a bit from his parents' murder. And we also see Barbara working out like a fiend again, but Jason leaves a note on her apartment door that basically confesses that he's in love with her and that he will change for her if she'll have him. But annoyingly, the note doesn't say taped to the door, and it falls and gets swept away by the frickin' janitor. So I don't know what the point of that was. It kind of is annoying. And then this book closes with kind of a flashback, a acknowledgement of actually the Killing Joke storyline with the comedian origin of the failed comedian, or origin of the Joker. But it also adds to this origin and shows that before he was even the Joker was very abusive to his wife, and the cops agreed to help her, and they put her on a train while the Joker's away, and then when he gets back, they tell her that she died. Which, if you read The Killing Joke, that is the story in that the police tell him that his wife died, but it turns out she actually was actually put on a train by the cops and sent somewhere. Which apparently Batman reveals to Alfred that he knows where they live, but he obviously can't tell them, and he actually knows the Joker's real name, but it's not. He says it's not important, and that he can't really reveal his name without jeopardizing the safety of his wife and kid. So that is where our Three Jokers story concludes. All right, so the Three Jokers. What did you think? I'm assuming this is the first time you read this. Is the first time I
Yes,
had.
it is. Yes, it is.
I had heard about it for a while. I kind of didn't realize it had come out as recently as 2020. I thought it was a
Right.
little older, but yeah. What did you think of this?
Um, I'm a little bit mixed on it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
First off, the concept of three Jokers is not really something that I'm a big fan of.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of what makes DC so unique is that its characters are sort of almost mythological in like their just how larger than life they are.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of splitting the Joker into three different entities, it sort of takes away from that, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the story itself I thought was interesting. I really liked the way that they portrayed Red Hood, especially a lot of the times
Yes.
he's sort of kind of watered down, but in this one he's
Yeah.
very violent and aggressive,
I
which I
was gonna say the same
appreciated.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I'm not really a fan of is what they're trying to build like a relationship
Mm-hmm.
between him and Barbara, but
Mm-hmm.
then at the very end, like he writes her a note, but then like she doesn't read it.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically it kind of builds up to nothing because like they're never going to bring it up again.
Yeah.
And it was so weird why they did that at all. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I feel like for me, as I was reading it, I was thinking like, I kind of feel like Barbara and Jason make a little more sense together than Dick and Barbara, just because they kind of like
Okay,
shared the same trauma and everything. And I don't
sure.
know, like I feel like Dick's fine with Starfire. No, like I get
Yeah,
like them growing up together and stuff, but I feel like after everything Barbara and Jason have been through, I feel like I could see them together like at this point
sure.
in the comics. But
Yeah.
then at
Mhm.
the end, yeah, like he wrote that note. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. He's doubling down on like. But then yeah, the letter gets like I don't know, whatever, swept away, and that
Yeah.
was kind of lame. uh,
Yeah.
like it would have been more interesting if like Barbara had read it and you weren't really sure like what her reaction was or something, as opposed to like
Right.
that that kind of
Right.
sucked.
Mhm.
But I was kind of thinking even before they like had that scene where they kissed and something, I'm like, are they kind of like leading, trying to like spark a romance between the two of them or something. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, like the thing with this book is it is Black Label, which
Mhm.
I do like that DC started doing that, but it also makes its continuity very nebulous
Yes.
because it mentions a lot of stuff that is canon with Batman.
Mhm.
And
Right.
that's something I really actually really enjoyed, that where they showed at the beginning Batman's like all the scars on his body and
Yeah.
like where he got them, the different villains, and then you start to see the ones that the Joker gave him, and he gave him like an exorbitant amount compared to the rest of his rogues gallery. Um,
Right.
I really liked that scene. There was a lot of interesting imagery in this book that I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. With the whole Three Jokers thing, I think it's an interesting concept, and I don't know how I feel about like I'm kind of torn because I think in the course of like this story it was interesting and it worked and made an interesting like mystery. But if you like
Mhm.
think about there being multiple Jokers throughout the whole history of like
Right.
Batman, it's like, I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like they made it better by the end because they strongly suggested that the Joker that survived was like the original. I
Mhm.
I I
Mhm.
I I I definitely wouldn't have been on board if like, you know, it was like a different, like a second or third or whatever Joker that
Right.
was the survivor. Yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like it maybe would have been a little less um I don't know, concerning if they had made it just like have three Jokers for like this one story, or like maybe like the last couple years or something. But they made it like
Yeah.
they made it seem like one Joker like was the original, and one Joker like shot Barbara, and one Joker
Yeah.
killed Jason and everything. And
Hmm.
part of me kind of wonders what the point of like the criminal Joker was. Um,
Yeah.
because he was like the least jokery out of all of them.
Hmm.
And honestly, I feel like in a lot of ways, not totally, but in a lot of ways, I feel like he reminded me a lot of kind of what we've seen in live action interpretations of Joker. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
like not totally, but I feel like not necessarily like Jack Nicholson's, maybe like a little bit, but
Hmm.
like definitely Heath Ledger's and a little bit Joaquin Phoenix's. I feel like they're
Okay. Yeah.
less like unhinged, like psycho serial killer kind of dude, and more like a driven criminal with makeup on.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm kind of wondering what the point of what his point was, but yeah, I think that scene was interesting. Like you said, Red Hood's kind of been watered down or sanitized a lot the last several
Yeah.
years. I did like to see that he's back to his like violent ways.
Yeah.
When he
Yeah.
just like straight up shot that one Joker. Um,
Right.
I mean, overall, I did really like this story, and I feel like it
Mhm.
doesn't bother me too much because it's kind of its own continuity, and they did something
Yeah.
different.
Right. Right.
And I feel like people have already kind of I did like that there was kind of a I guess an in-story commentary on like why characters are so different, cuz normally they just kind of ignore it. Like, well, yeah, he's
Yeah.
different in the Silver Age and the Golden Age, yada yada, but this was actually like, oh, well, here's an actual reason why this
Hmm.
character like had very different personalities throughout the years, and it wasn't just like
Right.
different writers and stuff.
Hmm.
Obviously I wouldn't like that for every character, but
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think what I really liked in this was like the final Joker. Um, I don't
Hmm.
know. In a way, it almost felt like a commentary on the character or something.
Hmm.
Like some adaptations have tried to turn Joker into the more like the other versions that were in it, and like the Joker that survived was kind of more like the I don't know, more the epitome of the character, I guess, at least to me.
Sure.
When he was kind of going on, a tirade, going, how he's like, like he didn't need to make himself important to Batman. He already is like the most important thing to, and he is like,
Yeah.
he's like chaos and the devil personified or something like that. I found that
Yeah.
interesting. And I really liked Batman in this too. Um,
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of stories when they talk about the whole no kill rule and stuff are more like the way Barbara reacted, where they're just like really kind of indignant and sanctimonious about it. And that's not like I'm not a huge fan of when they do that with Batman. I kind of prefer what they did when they do what this story did, where Batman is more like he has this rule because like he knows it'll be too easy to cross for him, and he doesn't want to do it. Like he even
Hmm.
says to Jason, like, do you know how much I wanted to put a bullet in Joker's head?
Right.
I liked all that. I feel like I liked a lot of the it felt like, I guess, like a character study in some ways of both Joker and Batman, and I did like a lot of that stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, this has been a very like controversial story because of the whole like three Jokers thing. I mean,
Right.
it's not as wild as that story where Alfred was actually Joker the whole time.
I didn't hear about that
I
one.
don't remember what that was. It was some like alternate, like it's not canon obviously, but there's some
Yeah.
story where Alfred is actually the Joker, and he like puts on the, the makeup and everything, and pulls off fake crimes to give Bruce like a villain to fight, to give him something to do, basically.
Because I remember in the sequel to The Dark Knight Returns, it turned out that Dick Grayson was the Joker. And then Batman like rips his head off and throws him in a volcano, which is just
Holy
wild.
hell.
But yeah,
What the
it's a
hell?
weird story.
And from what I hear, they're planning on making it, or at least Geoff Johns wants to make a sequel to this. So I don't know what that would do, like continuity wise, if it would just be kind of a contained sequel, or if it
Right.
would like, cause, oh yeah, and that's something very interesting that it did at the end is it basically made the Killing Joke canon for the most part. Whereas
Yeah.
the Killing Joke has kind of been canon, like they've kind of picked and choose what they kept canon from that story, like the whole
Yeah.
Barbara getting shot and everything. But then with Joker's origin, maybe, and then at the end with Batman like seemingly killing Joker, they definitely didn't keep that in. So
Right.
I thought it was interesting that they, at least in this story, canonized that the Joker is the Joker from the Killing Joke. I find that,
Mhm.
I mean, it's interesting, and I feel like they've already like had that story for so long as a Joker origin. Why not just acknowledge it as like, yeah, that's the Joker's origin? I mean, there is the whole
Yeah.
thing with like keeping his identity a mystery and everything, but at the same time, I feel like it's been long enough that we don't have to necessarily stick to Joker not having any origin. um
Hmm.
I feel like it's not as interesting as it was like years ago, him not having an origin, because now we're just
Yeah.
like, okay, I mean, he's been the Joker forever. At a certain point he stops being a three-dimensional character if he doesn't have any like origin, I guess, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that this story does that I think is kind of weird is that
Mm.
towards the end, Batman reveals to Alfred that he's known who the Joker was all
Yeah,
along, and he has like a wife and kids in Alaska for some
yeah,
reason. I think that whole thing was so weird. And like,
yeah, that
if there
was,
are three
yeah,
Jokers, then which Joker has the kid in Alaska? I don't know.
right.
It's very strange.
Well, it seemed pretty, I mean, it seemed to me that the end Joker was like the Joker, I guess. I felt like they
Okay.
strongly like suggested that, and it seems like,
Hmm.
um, you know, at least I took it that that Joker, the Joker that survived, is the one that he was talking about, I guess.
Okay.
But I guess
Yeah.
it was a little nebulous, and yeah, like yeah, I wasn't. I think it was an interesting twist, but also it's a kind of wild retcon because in the Killing Joke, like his Joker's, before he was Joker, his wife and kid, did die. Whereas
Right.
in this retcon, he was like kind of abusive before he was kind of a psycho before he became Joker, and
Hmm.
that's why his wife and unborn, with her unborn child tried to escape, and I guess got help from the cops to like fake her death, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's kind of wild. I feel like I have to ruminate on it more, I guess. Because, I mean,
Right.
for me, I do appreciate the, attempt to do something different while at the same
Hmm.
time
Hmm.
still working with previously, laid out story and everything. Um,
Right.
but it is kind of wild, yeah, thinking of Joker having a wife and kid off somewhere,
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
at the same time, I think it's interesting that they were basically saying that Joker was already like a bad guy before he became the Joker, and I think that's interesting. That
Yeah.
it's not necessarily him going insane that made him, you know,
Right.
evil. He
Right.
already had that in him. I find that interesting, and I feel like that kind of makes sense. But I don't
Hmm.
know, kind of, yeah, kind of a lot to unpack in this story. It does a lot of stuff.
Right. Right.
Um, and none of it, I wouldn't say any of it bothers me, but I wouldn't say I like all of it. um
Yeah.
I think largely because it is kind of a one-off story, even though it builds on established canon. But yeah, if they do a sequel, I'd be interested to see what the hell they they do with it. I don't know how, like,
Right.
there's six Jokers. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was kind of crazy though, just having like a whole pool filled with people just like swimming, just like
Yeah.
floating in acid. Like, holy crap! Like, I did appreciate all that like gory stuff because you don't always see that with the Joker, and I feel like that's kind of where the
Right.
Joker's at his best when you're just like, geez, this guy is a sick fuck, you know?
Right, right, right.
All right, so wrapping things up, what do you have for your cultured pick this week?
This week I am dipping back into my Teen Titans collection. I'm going back all the way to 1967 with Teen Titans number 13. And what makes this issue so unique is that it's basically so the Teen Titans they run into this guy named Scrooge, and they're like, well, he's kind of a dick, so we're just gonna reenact a Christmas Carol and hopefully it'll work.
What the heck?
Yeah.
That's
So
funny.
it's wild, but yeah, it's definitely one of the weirder ones for sure, but it's a lot of fun.
Was it like a Christmas special thing, or is it just like random?
Yes, it was a Christmas
Okay,
special time.
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense then. Interesting. Yeah, so
yeah.
what I have for this week is Venom number 24.
Mhm.
And I've been kind of picking up Venom comics like randomly the last like year, I guess, last few months.
Yeah.
Just kind of because some of them seem interesting, some of them, are like I'm not like super committed to the series, but I picked up the
Mhm.
issue last time or last issue, and then I picked up this one because Doctor Doom was on the cover, and I'm like, huh, Venom story with Doctor Doom that could be interesting. Um,
Yeah.
and it was actually pretty interesting because Eddie Brock, who is now like Bedlam, I guess. Like he has this symbiote named Bedlam that it's kind of confusing. It's like a future version of himself or something weird. But anyway,
Mhm.
so he's not Venom. He's like got this red Bedlam symbiote thing, and he travels to
Okay.
Latveria because they kind of do a retcon where, in like the second Lethal Protector series that was pretty
Mhm.
recent, he and Doctor Doom have some sort of encounter. So this time, and I guess now Eddie is kind of like the established king of the symbiotes. um,
Mhm. Yeah.
so it seems apparently Doctor Doom wants his control of the symbiotes, basically.
Mhm.
But it's just a very interesting comic. It was like the overarching story wasn't as interesting as just the interaction between Doctor Doom and Eddie Brock and everything. And when Eddie Brock first shows up at Doom's castle, he like invites him in for dinner and everything. But then they have this huge fight, and it was just kind of cool. Um,
Mhm.
that I was a little afraid they were gonna like water down Doctor Doom, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And he not only fought Venom, or I guess Bedlam, with his suit, but he also used some magic spells and stuff, which is always fun to see Doom
Yeah.
dabbling in magic and everything. So it was just kind of
Mhm.
a fun issue having Doctor Doom and Eddie Brock in the same thing, and it kind of
Yeah, for
set
sure.
up some things in the future that could be interesting.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yeah, that was pretty cool. And
Yeah.
that is where we are going to end this episode. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Cultured Pull List. Let us know in the comments which Batman Spawn crossover is your favorite. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Cultured Pull List. Let us know in the comments what you think of this story. If you agree with us or you have your own opinions on this controversial crossover. This, if you would like to help support us on Patreon, you can check us out on patreon.com/theculturednerd and look for our show's specific tier. Thank you so much to all of our current Patreon supporters: Wesley H, Mitch S, Connor Y, Anna M, Oscar B, Craig L, and Salib K. Huge thanks to Jose Navarro, who designed our visual asset. I have been your host, Michael Malillo, and my co host has been Luke S. Thank you again for joining us. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you would like to check out The Cultured Nerd on social media, you can use the QR code on the bottom left. And if you would like to check out Casual Experts, me and Luke's other brand, you can scan the QR code on the bottom right.